The daily drumbeat of many health news stories is a disgrace. Commercial interests and those who stand to gain by promotion of their products are now able to buy their way into healthcare consumers' minds, often exaggerating conditions, turning normal states of health into diseases and disease mongering. And there are costs to be paid for this, costs and harms to the individual and to society. We are not all sick. We do not all have weapons of mass destruction inside of us that we need to screen for. We are redefining what it is to be normal humans. Even medical journals, as we've said, present a biased, largely positive view of research. Meantime, the cost of healthcare is playing havoc with many nations' economies. And the individual patient or consumer is now expected to take on more responsibility for healthcare decision-making. We would be healthier if we had more consumers who were healthy skeptics. Healthy skeptics who learned a few simple but vital lessons. That in healthcare, more isn't always better. Newer isn't always better. And beware of anyone who claims that it is. There is tremendous potential that social media will help consumers find new pathways to information. But there's also tremendous risk that it will be even more difficult to evaluate the source of that information and to scrutinize the claims being made on blogs, on Twitter, on Facebook, and through other new channels. Science journalist David Brown of the Washington Post recently wrote that he believes that public interest in scientific discoveries, quote, carries with it an opportunity for journalism to improve itself and in some sense to remake itself. He wrote that journalism is the disposable addition to our education that either lands on our doorstep or pops up on our computer screen every day. But I especially like what he wrote next. Change the slide, please. He wrote, it is something that both reflects the spirit of the times, the zeitgeist, and can shape it. Good journalism can make public discourse more honest and less oversimplified, more dominated by logical thinking and less dominated by rhetoric. What does science journalism have that makes it a model for good journalism as a whole? Well, the most important thing it has is evidence. In this new world, science reporting done without exaggeration and with an eye to giving the reader enough information to make up his own mind can be a model for intelligent discourse. It can be an exercise in truth-telling and democracy. And what could be better than that? For those of us devoted to the study and improvement of communication about medicine and science, this is an exciting and important time. Think about how the credibility of medicine and the healthcare industry is at stake with bold proclamations of often unproven, expensive, and potentially harmful technologies. And think about how the credibility of journalism and communication that disseminates the information from medicine and science is at stake. An editorial in the journal Nature earlier this year stated, "Science and journalism are not alien cultures, for all that they can sometimes seem that way. They are built on the same foundation, the belief that conclusions require evidence, that the evidence should be open to everyone, and that everything is subject to question. Both groups are comprised of professional skeptics. My point, in conclusion, is that both science and journalism must help develop and nurture healthy skepticism in the public. And I believe we will be busy at that for a long time. So thank you for your attention.
Pues yo sí que tengo una pregunta. Es ¿cómo reaccionan los periodistas ante el screening que ustedes hacen a través de su web en este equipo? ¿Cuál es la reacción de los periodistas? Porque me imagino claramente cuál sería la reacción de nosotros, los periodistas en España. ¿Hace falta que la diga?
I was very concerned 3.5 years ago when we began this effort. Since my background is in journalism, I know that journalists can be defensive. None of us accepts criticism as well as we should, perhaps. And this was a new idea, that we would be checking up on you and grading you every day. So I was very sensitive about that. And after 3.5 years, my strongest reaction would be that I've been very pleasantly surprised at how well accepted this has been. Granted, there are some critics. I told you last night I could probably count them on the fingers of 2 hands. And they are vocal and strong critics. But most people are very accepting of this. And I'm personally and professionally moved by this, and the way I interpret this is that those journalists know more about these topics in their newsroom than anyone else does. So when they need help, there is no one in their newsroom to turn to for help. And they view us exactly as we want to be viewed, not as harsh critics, but as helpers who want to improve things. They view us, I believe, as independent, expert observers who can give them help and feedback they can't get in their own organizations.